Congressman, the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you voted against the war in Iraq
I did.
in the beginning. It's now been going on. We're now towards the drawdown, and things are kind of still up in the air in Afghanistan. What should happen there?
Well, we should get out of there. We went in there, and you know, I don't mind admitting that I agonized over that vote. I have a district that Fort Bliss is very important to us. I talked to a lot of people before I took that vote. I was already on the Intelligence Committee. I knew the things that the administration was saying were not accurate and factual, but because these are issues that you learn about in a classified setting, you can't very well go out and talk about it. But I felt that voting against it was the right thing to do. I agonized because those of us that have seen combat realize that should be the very last option that a president uses. That should be something that you use only as a last resort. It shouldn't be a war of choice. It shouldn't be because you want to show off your macho-ness and the kind of talk and rhetoric that we heard out of the president, the vice president, even the Secretary of State. These are our best young men and women that we're going to send into combat. Those of us that have had that experience know that it's not about the music, it's not about flags flying, it's not about high-fiving, it's about seeing limbs blown off, it's about seeing the life of a buddy just ebb right out in front of you, and them asking for their mother as the last. Those are tough things that come. At least they came to me and made that a very agonizing decision. But I thought it was the right thing to do. Many people later wish they'd have voted with us, but at the time, I think everybody was buffaloed by a very aggressive administration that said, you're either with us or against us. You're either for this country or you're not doing your patriotic duty. Well, you know what? When you have fought for this country, when you have seen the worst in combat, I don't think anyone's got any right to question your motives. And I think that history has shown that was the right decision to make. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein never had anything to do with 9/11. It was something that was ginned up, and those people today, I hope, are having a tough time sleeping.
Well, Congressman, going from kind of one position of being under fire to another, during the healthcare debate, you and your office took a lot of public heat for that bill. Your thoughts on the Healthcare Reform Act? Has it ultimately been a good thing? And what are your general thoughts about healthcare?
Listen, if there's one thing that we know of today is that the insurance industry has way too much power. They decide whether or not they pay for drugs and medications. They decide whether or not someone can go into the hospital and is put out on the street within 24 hours or 24 hours later. I am proud of that vote. In this district alone, we've got 233,000 people that are living without health care insurance. We have another high percentage that have been put into bankruptcy because they had insurance, but they capped out. They had to sell their car and their house, because you're not going to let a loved one die, and they were put into bankruptcy. The health insurance industry today cannot use pre-existing conditions as an excuse. In that law, made it possible for students between 21, 22, and 26 to get health coverage on their parents' policy. I understand why the insurance industry is mad at us, but you know what? They've never had a higher profit ratio. They're not gonna willingly do what's right. So I think healthcare reform was important. I stand by my vote, and the many people that thank me almost every day for me is all the justification I need to continue working towards that end.
Well, it's somewhat of a follow-up question on that. We were talking about the Tea Party earlier, and we were talking about, you just made the comment that, you know, folks don't want to let their loved one die because of lack of health care. Yet recently, in a debate sponsored by the Tea Party amongst the Republican candidates for president, they actually cheered when the hypothetical discussion of whether or not someone should be let to die because of a lack of health care. What do you think that says about that philosophy? And there's a lot of folks within your own district that have that mentality. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think they have to live with their own conscience. I would be very surprised if even those people would drive by an accident when somebody needs help. But I think it says more about the herd mentality that we're seeing at some of these debates. They also cheered wildly when the issue of capital punishment was discussed. You know what? That's not the country I fought for. That's not what makes and defines us as Americans. That's not why we send our men and women in uniform around the world to right injustices. And I think those people should be ashamed of themselves.